I purchased a foreclosed mountain cabin for $12,000 following my divorce. I thought I'd renovate it myself, perhaps turn a profit. So I'm heading up there with my contractor, Miguel, to inspect this mountain home I now possess. We turn the last bend, and I slam on the brakes. There are vehicles in my driveway. The cabin has new paint. Children's bikes strewn about the lawn. I approach the front door, totally bewildered. Before I could even rap on it, it opens wide. This blonde lady in yoga leggings stands there with a coffee cup, eyeing me suspiciously like I'm peddling wares. "Can I assist you?" she inquires with that phony polite Karen vibe. I present my deed. "Madam, this is my land." She peeks at the document and genuinely chuckles. "Oh, darling, we've resided here more than a year. Adverse possession statutes. Research it. The aroma of a meal being prepared wafts over. In my kitchen. Best of luck with that removal." She grins smugly, shutting the door right in my face. I'm left there with my jaw dropped, clutching a deed to a house I can't access. What would you do if squatters barred you from your own residence? This escalates wildly. Allow me to rewind and explain how I ended up in this horror. My name's Jake. I'm 45 and half a year ago. I believe my life was sorted. I'd managed a thriving contracting firm in Denver for 15 years. Solid income, regular customers, pleasant suburban home with a 2-car garage. Then my spouse Lisa chose to discover herself with her yoga teacher Brad, a man-bun sporting spiritual guide who spoke solely in Sanskrit and essential oil suggestions. The divorce ruined me financially. Colorado's no-fault system meant Lisa's fling with Chakra Brad held no legal weight. Assets divided evenly. My residence, my equipment, my vehicle, all liquidated to support her enlightenment journey with her illuminated paramour who likely couldn't have placed a tire if his energy field hinged on it. So there I was, 45 and penniless, dwelling in a studio apartment reeking of the prior occupant's chain-smoking routine, pondering where it all derailed. That's when I noticed the county auction ad. Mountain cabin, 2 acres, Woodland Park, Colorado. Opening bid, $8,000. The images appeared dilapidated, decaying porch, shattered panes, weeds higher than letterboxes. Ideal for somebody needing to reconstruct both a dwelling and his existence. I was the sole bidder. $12,000 later, I held title to a slice of Colorado wilds. The estate had been Harold Brennan's, 73, who'd inhabited it solo for 30 years. County documents indicated he'd ceased tax payments 3 years prior and passed intestate. No testament, no kin, merely accumulating healthcare debts in a forsaken cabin gradually reverting to the wild. I followed protocol entirely. Title search, insurance, boundary surveys, all proper. Here's a crucial legal tidbit. Purchasing at a county tax sale grants clear title, erasing all prior liens and assertions. The county attempted to find Harold's heirs for 2 years before deeming the property deserted and selling it. My strategy was simple. Evaluate the issues with Miguel, my dependable contractor. Then dedicate a year transforming this mountain ruin into a $60,000 haven. Sufficient gain to reboot my life. What I was unaware was that another party had been devising their own schemes for my estate. Introducing Brenda Hutchkins, 52, bleach blonde, always clad in high-end athletic gear that likely exceeded most folks' rent payments. Brenda had mastered the extended fraud, particularly zeroing in on foreclosed homes acquired by freshly divorced males. She'd executed this identical ruse in 3 other Colorado counties. Brenda occupied there with her jobless son, Tyler, 25, whose primary talents encompassed leisure drug consumption and invented property vandalism, plus her daughter, Madison, 17, schooled to summon tears instantly for peak empathy effect. Here's what Brenda had been up to with my property for 8 months, operating an unlawful Airbnb named Mountain Escape Haven, $150 per night, fully reserved during peak tourism. She'd earned over $6,000 leasing my home to outsiders while I was finalizing divorce documents. She'd also applied for homestead tax relief, asserting the cabin as her main dwelling to evade property levies. When orchestrating a swindle, why not optimize the deceit? But here's where Brenda committed her initial significant blunder, the unjust deed that would ultimately undo her. 3 days prior to my arrival, she'd grown arrogant. A local construction inspector appeared inquiring about unauthorized remodels. Rather than staying discreet, Brenda lodged a grievance with the county alleging she was a long-standing occupant being tormented by business entities attempting to pilfer her family abode. She'd basically initiated conflict with me before I even realized she existed. The ascent up that mountain ought to have been restorative. Twisting paths amid ponderosa pines, that fresh breeze pungent with pine sap and potential. Miguel sat beside me examining supply inventories and grumbling about timber costs. "Boss, are you certain about this spot?" he queried. "County sales typically signify utter catastrophes." "That's precisely why no one else bid on it," I replied, inhaling that pure mountain atmosphere. "That's why it's mine." Infamous final statement. Because as we navigated that ultimate turn, I learned my deserted cabin was far from deserted. Vehicles in the drive, recent coating on the exterior, children's playthings littered eau de grass as if a household had dwelled there for months, which, as it transpired, they had. So, there I stand, in my own drive, grasping official papers that evidently hold no sway with the woman who just banged the door on me. Miguel gazes at me as if I've gone insane. "Boss, what on earth just occurred?" No clue. I inform him, still fixated on the door. "But we're going to discover." I rap again, more forcefully now. The door swings open, and now a fellow looms behind Brenda. Tall, lanky, likely mid-20s with a sort of unkempt beard that yells, "I'm unemployed, but I hold firm views on society." "Madam," I state, striving to remain composed, "I require documentation verifying your right to occupy." Brenda beams that artificial kind smile once more. "Oh, dear, I don't have to verify a thing to you. With inhabitants, you're the intruder." That's when she unleashes the initial salvo. "Tyler, contact the sheriff. This individual is bothering us." Tyler, presumably the scruffy bearded offspring, extracts his phone with his conceited smirk. "Already calling, Mom." The sharp flavor of alarm coats my tongue as I grasp how rapidly this is intensifying. 20 minutes on, a sheriff's vehicle arrives, and my spirits plummet when I spot Deputy Rick Morrison emerge. The manner he strides directly to Brenda and offers her a warm embrace reveals all I need about his allegiance. "Brenda, what's the issue here?" he inquires, as if addressing his beloved relative. "This man asserts he owns our house," she declares, and I vow she contrives to quiver her voice deliberately. "He's been menacing us, snapping photos, making us feel vulnerable in our own dwelling." I advance with my deed, attempting to maintain an even tone. "Officer, I acquired this property at county auction 3 months back. Here's my proof." Deputy Rick scarcely scans my forms. "Sir, even if you did buy this property, Colorado legislation is explicit regarding renter protections. You can't simply appear and intimidate folks who resided somewhere." "They're not renters," I retort, sensing my pulse surge. "They're intruders. That's a civil issue," he remarks with a casual dismissal. "You'll have to pursue it via the judiciary." Then Brenda stages her Oscar-worthy act. She commences weeping. Not mere tears, but a complete dramatic spectacle. Shoulders trembling, palms covering her visage. The entire performance. "I'm terrified," she weeps. "We've dwelled here tranquilly for over a year, and now this man arrives declaring he owns our home. What if he returns at night? What my kids?" Deputy Rick's demeanor stiffens. He regards me as though I just vowed to raise a shelter for orphans. "Sir, I must insist you depart this property at once. Any additional interaction with these occupants will constitute harassment, and I'll be compelled to detain you." The scent would smoke from my own flue wafts through the yard. Smoke from the hearth I rightfully own in a home I rightfully purchased, while I'm being warned of arrest for intruding on my own land. This is utterly mad. I convey to Miguel as we descend the mountain. They're inhabiting my house, and I'm the one facing arrest threats. But Brenda wasn't finished. While I drove home in stunned quiet, she was diligently composing her online opus. By dusk, she'd shared on 3 local Facebook groups a narrative that would evoke tears from Shakespeare. Urgent. Corporate slumlord attempting to seize our family residence. A man appeared today asserting he purchased our house and insisting we vacate promptly. We've resided here over a year, tending the property after the prior owner deceased. Now this exploiter seeks to eject a lone mother and her offspring to the curb. In 2 hours, 47 responses, mostly labeling me from a soulless tycoon to a menace to laboring households. Janet commented, "This exemplifies America's ills. Wealthy folks snapping up all the budget housing." Mike contributed, "I wish this avaricious scoundrel receives his due. Leave that family be." Perusing these remarks felt like repeated stomach punches. These individuals had never encountered me, knew zilch about the circumstances, yet they'd already cast me as the antagonist in Brenda's fabricated tale. That restless night, fury gradually supplanted astonishment. I recalled something from my contractor education years past in Colorado. Adverse possession demands 18 unbroken years of tenure, with valid legal assertions, not the mythical duration Brenda was fabricating. The following dawn, I began phoning. Attorney, county evaluator, every enterprise in Woodland Park, inquiring about Brenda Hutchkins. By midday, I'd unearthed 3 intriguing details about my occupant. First, she was indebted to half the regional merchants. Second, she tried this precise fraud in Jefferson County 2 years before. Third, despite alleging over a year of residency, her service hookups only traced back 8 months. The pleasant aroma of retribution began blending with that mountain pine breeze. The pursuit was formally underway. 3 days on, Brenda released pandemonium. I'm sipping morning brew in my studio flat when my phone erupts. Message upon message from unfamiliar digits. "Viewed you on the broadcast, you scum. Hope you're pleased, terrorizing kin. Affluent, ruining our society." I switched to Channel 9, and behold her, Brenda positioned before my cabin, appearing drained and hopeless. Adolescent daughter, Madison, grips a handmade placard. "Don't render us destitute." The journalist, some youngster likely fresh from Journalism Academy, is gulping every syllable. This is Sarah Collin from Woodland Park, where a native family confront expulsion from their abode of over a year. Brenda Hutchkins claims a corporate buyer acquired their estate and demands they depart. Brenda wipes her eyes. "We looked after Harold during his final days. We upheld his property, funded fixes out of pocket. Now this guy arrives with forms aiming to cast my kids to the pavement." The footage displays Tyler nailing something on the veranda, likely his initial legitimate labor in ages, while Madison generates flawless sobs on cue. The household launched a GoFundMe for court expenses. Sarah proceeds. "They're seeking $10,000 to battle this exploited property owner." I almost hurled my cup at the TV, but fury honed my concentration. Rather than wallowing, I devoted the afternoon to probing Brenda's history. That's when I discovered Rosemary Rhee, ex-San Francisco business fraud attorney, exhausted and relocated to the Peaks. Now she operated a modest firm from her residence workspace, the fragrance of jasmine infusion permeating her lounge as she examined my papers. "Classic deception," she stated, laying out documents over her low table. But Brenda's clever, ideal sufferer act, and Sheriff Morrison's either dishonest or ignorant. Can we demonstrate she's fabricating? Rosemary grinned. "Jake, I pursued fraudsters for 20 years. They invariably drop clues. In days, we charted Brenda's whole scheme. Jefferson, Boulder, and Larimer counties. Identical method, each instance. Focus on separated males purchasing repossessions. Assert guardian role. Act the sufferer when challenged. Then we located her actual dwelling. A double-wide mobile home 40 miles distant. Present levees. Functioning services, completely inhabited. She'd been residing there while managing my cabin as her private holiday lease treasure trove. The revelation occurred at Murphy's Hardware in town. Proprietor Frank, with oily Tournley marking his nails, scowled at Brenda's mention. That lady purchased $300 in materials 6 months back. Coatings would asserted she'd settle when her coverage payout arrived. Let me predict, no reimbursement. Nada. Then last month, her offspring enters. Identical tale. 200 additional for urgent sealing mends. Frank presented me invoices. Sage green coating adorning my cabin. Timber for my platform restorations. Even those lawn statues arranged like small offenders on my veranda. But the genuine prize emerged from Lisa Rodriguez at Mountain View Eatery. The acrid odor of scorched brew lingered in the atmosphere as she recounted Brenda's benevolent scam. She'd visit bi-weekly alleging her ailing mom required complimentary meals. We provided her perhaps $200 in food across 3 months. What transpired? My relative observed her acquiring beef at Walmart with aid vouchers the same day. She declared her kin was famished. When I challenged her, she became hostile, claimed we bias against solo parents. I was linking elements. Brenda didn't merely intrude. She methodically defrauded whole neighborhoods, regional enterprises, generous locals, anybody with empathy and open wallets. Here's where Brenda committed her deadly mistake. All that GoFundMe funds, donated dishes, and undeclared Airbnb earnings, none reported to the IRS. But then she astonished me with her subsequent action. That night, I received a contact from my financial institution. Somebody had submitted a bogus demand against my balance, stating I'd issued invalid payments for a state I didn't possess. Brenda was attempting to lock my resources while I contested her legally. Intelligent, ruthless, but two could engage in foul play. I dedicated that evening studying Colorado levy regulations, and I uncovered something wonderful. When somebody asserts a property as their main dwelling for levy reasons, like Brenda's homestead relief, but truly resides elsewhere, it's serious tax deception. 5 years leased, up to 20 if the sum surpasses $10,000. Brenda had been declaring my cabin as her lawful abode to sidestep property duties, while keeping her mobile home as her real residence. Dual occupancy fraud, unreported lease revenue, phony benevolence assertions. She constructed herself a fragile structure. The following dawn, I placed 3 contacts. Initially to the IRS deception line. Secondly, to the Colorado Revenue Agency. Thirdly, to Channel 9 broadcast. "Hello, Sarah," I stated when the novice journalist responded. "This is Jake, the exploited property owner from the prior day's report. I've got some files on Brenda Hutchkins you might deem noteworthy." The pleasant mountain breeze was beginning to aroma like fairness. By midday, Brenda's GoFundMe had been halted for deceptive assertions, and a very solemn-appearing lady from the State Levy Division was ascending that dirt path to my cabin. The pursuer was on the verge of becoming the pursued. 2 weeks on, Brenda opted to raise it all. I'm examining builder proposals when Miguel contacts, tone strained with fury. "Boss, come here immediately. Fetch a recorder." The journey seemed infinite. Upon reaching, my pulse halted. Each southward window shattered, entryway dangling askew. Tyler perched on my veranda, consuming ale like he controlled the spot. What occurred here? Tyler glanced up with reddened eyes and an arrogant smile. "Oh, hey, property owner. Encountered some building problems, danger risks, performed some urgent fixes." The pleasant mountain breeze reeked of cannabis, and fractured shards crunched beneath my shoes as I inspected the devastation. Interior was cataclysmic. Gaps smashed through each partition. Cooking basin torn away. Liquid dispersing over timber like contagion. Tyler had wielded a mallet to my aspirations. "Mom's recording all," Tyler stated, trailing me indoors. "Going to demonstrate how you permitted this wreck to disintegrate." Genuine slum owner conduct. Concealed recorders hidden angles placed to render sabotage appears oversight. Brenda appeared from the sleeping area. High-end exercise attire immaculate amid the turmoil. "Jake, ideal arrival. We're capturing all the hazard concerns you've disregarded as a state holder." She recorded me with her device. This individual permitted his estate to worsen perilously. We've been compelled to perform urgent mends to safeguard my offspring. The boldness was astounding. She was taping her offspring's ruin and faulting me. But I'd acquired knowledge my concealed protection setup had seized 2 weeks of recordings. Each strike Tyler delivered, each pane broken, each conduit ruined, all in sharp, clear definition. "Brenda, you acquainted with Colorado Amended Law 18-4-501? Her assurance wavered. "What? Criminal damage in the primary level. Estate harm exceeding $2,000. Serious offense realm." I displayed the protection footage. Tyler brandishing a mallet with stimulant-driven zeal. 12 hours of video. Each vandalism act, marked with time and date. Brenda paled beneath her cosmetics. 15,000 in harm thus far. I persisted, but here's the elegance. You recorded yourselves executing it. Then my device vibrated. Abandon the lawsuit or this escalates. We are aware of your residence. I captured the menace and contacted Rosemary promptly. But while noting Tyler's spree, I achieved an astonishing find. When he'd mallet the sleeping partition, he'd revealed a concealed space. Within, encased in synthetic sacks, were numerous files, health logs, coverage documents, judicial papers, all pertaining to Harold Brennan, the former holder. As I distributed them over my cooking surface that night, the fragments aligned. Harold hadn't simply perished and abandoned his state. He'd been methodically separated and economically mistreated. The files narrated a terrifying tale. Brenda had embedded herself into Harold's existence as his guardian amid his concluding year. Authority of lawyer forms with dubious marks. Financial account alterations directing his welfare to profiles she managed. Health logs indicating he'd been progressively bewildered and reliant. But the explosive was a vitality coverage plan. $40,000, with Brenda designated as recipient. The mark appeared unlike Harold's tremulous script on prior files. I contacted Rosemary at midnight. "Jake, what you're outlining is intruding," she stated, her tone serious. "It's senior mistreatment, possibly killing." Killing. Harold's health logs reveal he was fit for his years until Brenda assumed guardian. Then swift deterioration, dubious drug adjustments, and abrupt demise. The coverage firm would never have disbursed if they'd realized she was dwelling in his residence, overseeing his funds. My veins chilled. This wasn't regarding estate any longer. Brenda hadn't merely pilfered my home. She'd possibly slain a gentleman for it. The subsequent dawn introduced a fresh intensification. I discovered my vehicle defaced in my flat lot. Exploiter scrawled over the flank in bright citrus. The pungent synthetic odor seared my passages. A message beneath the blade. Ultimate caution. But rather than scaring me, it solidified all. Brenda was frantic since she realized I was approaching something larger than intruding. I contacted the FBI branch in Denver. Special Agent Martinez arrived, a sharp tone. "Agent Martinez, I must disclose suspected senior mistreatment, coverage deception, and feasible murder." 3 hours on, she positioned in my studio flat assessing Harold's concealed files. The aroma of her dark brew blended with persistent coating vapors from my vehicle exterior. "Mr. Jake, what began as a state conflict has evolved into a possible killing probe. If Harold Brennan was toxified or abandoned to perish and Brenda gathered vitality coverage while residing in his home, we're examining national accusations bearing lifetime penalties. What's our subsequent action? We construct an impervious lawsuit. Each menace she issues, each fabrication she utters, each proof fragment she attempts to obliterate merely fortifies our stance. But henceforth, no immediate interaction. We manage all. As Agent Martinez departed with duplicates of Harold's files, I comprehended the risks had surged past my envisioning. I wasn't merely contending for my estate any longer. I was contending for fairness for a slain elderly gentleman who expired solitary, deceived by somebody he relied on to tend him. The peak breeze savored like reprisal now. The contact arrived at 2 a.m., 3 days post the FBI acquired Harold's files. "Jake, it's Agent Martinez. We require to convene now and fetch all you possess on Brenda Hutchkins." The immediacy in her tone dispatched frost through my arteries. We convened at a round-the-clock lorry halt beyond Colorado Springs, the odor of fuel emissions and scorched brew forming a suitably bleak setting for what she was on the verge of disclosing. Martinez pushed a beige dossier over the adhesive from mica surface. Harold Brennan wasn't merely slain Jake. He was one of at minimum 4 aged gentlemen Brenda methodically executed for their coverage funds. The initial image struck me like a blow to the abdomen. Harold from 18 months prior, robust, beaming, positioned before my cabin with angling pole. The second image captured weeks pre his demise displayed a bony specter of the identical gentleman, sunken gaze and scarcely identifiable. Add to chat. Serial murderer. The phrase seemed unreal in this brightly illuminated desolation. Monetary serial murderer with a highly particular pursuit method. Aged male, secluded, considerable holdings, no immediate relatives. Martinez's tone bore the burden of somebody who'd witnessed excessive wickedness. "She didn't happen upon your estate by chance. She assassinated Harold deliberately to pilfer it. My palms trembled as she guided me through the chronology. Brenda had encountered Harold at an elderly hub morning assistance gathering. She'd masqueraded as a bereaved spouse desiring solace, while truly scouting for targets. She singled him out like a hunter, choosing quarry. Standard separation strategy. Martinez proceeded, bonded with him, grew essential, then progressively severed him from all others, altered his contact number, seized correspondence, persuaded him his kin were attempting to plunder him. The health documents depicted a dreadful image. Harold's deterioration had been methodical, inexplicable slimming, disorientation, frailty. His physician had recorded worries regarding drug oversight, but Brenda constantly had believable justifications. Gradual toxin? I inquired, my gut twisting. We won't confirm until disinterment, but the scheme aligns. Arsenic likely. Simple to acquire, difficult to identify. Appears as organic senescence. But here's where my fury genuinely erupted. Harold Vitality coverage was valued at $40,000, but it included a co-residence provision. Disbursement would be invalidated if the recipient cohabited with the departed. Typical safeguard against precisely this kind of deceit. She gathered the funds regardless. Utilized Harold's post to obtain the payment. Fabricated papers asserting she resided elsewhere. National postal deceit, coverage deceit, levy avoidance. Martinez's mandible clenched. She's been surviving off his slaying for more than a year, while operating your cabin as her individual holiday lease. Then arrived a revelation that altered all. Jake Harold possesses a relative in Florida, Fletcher Brennan. He's been tracking Brenda for 2 years, constructing a slaying lawsuit since prior to Harold's demise. Fletcher had been endeavoring to contact his kin when telephone responses ceased. He'd engaged confidential detectives, monitored Harold's monetary logs, even unearthed protection recordings from the elderly hub displaying Brenda deliberately nearing aged males. Fletcher cataloged 3 additional dubious passings in various regions. Identical scheme. Solitary aged males. Abrupt wellness drop after Brenda infiltrated their existences. Enigmatic demises. Coverage disbursements. The lorry halts. Glowing illuminations blinked above as the scale struck me. I wasn't combating an intruder or even a basic swindler. I was the inadvertent observer who tripped into a serial murderer's meticulously built existence. She's slain 4 males that we are aware of, Martinez uttered softly. Acquired hundreds of thousands from their assassinations. Your estate acquisition jeopardized her whole venture. The flavor of steel permeated my oral cavity as excitement surged. What transpires now? Now we have her trapped. Each menace she's issued, each proof item she's ruined, each fabrication she stated, it all bolsters premeditated slaying accusations. Martinez grinned darkly. She doesn't realize it yet, but she just advanced from estate deceit to execution chamber. Exterior, a heavy vehicle's motor thundered activation, but all I could perceive was the noise of fairness ultimately commencing operation. The contest had entirely transformed, and this occasion, I was grasping all the advantages. The subsequent dawn, my studio dwelling turned FBI base. Agent Martinez reached with Fletcher Brennan, Harold's relative from Florida, and sufficient proof containers to construct a minor stronghold. Fletcher was a slender, fervent gentleman in his 50s with a vacant expression of somebody who'd been bearing sorrow and wrath for 2 years. She assassinated my kin, he declared plainly, clasping my palm with a hold that could pulverize nuts, and she's going to compensate for it. The aroma of dark brew and justified indignation saturated my confined habitat as we distributed the proof. Monetary logs, health papers, monitoring images, communication records. Fletcher had been assembling this lawsuit like a gentleman obsessed. Harold was the sole kin I had remaining after my folks perished. Fletcher clarified, his tone strained with restrained feeling. When he halted responding to my contacts, I realized something was amiss. Harold never omitted our weekend telephone discussions for 30 years. Martinez outlined the primary scheme like a commander readying for conflict. We're going to permit Brenda to believe she's triumphing while we assemble an indestructible national lawsuit, she declared. Each action she takes henceforth just provides us additional proof. The tactic was exquisite in its straightforwardness. 3 concurrent probes operating at once. the FBI chasing national slang and deceit accusations, the IRS pursuing levy avoidance, and a coverage firm submitting their own penal grievance for the deceptive $40,000 disbursement. She can't contest all of us, Martinez clarified. Even if she overcomes one accusation, the others will demolish her. Fletcher unlocked his portfolio and extracted a dossier that caused my gut to churn. Images of Harold's concluding months, covertly captured by a local who become wary. The advancement from robust 73-year-old to bony debris was recorded in terrifying specificity. Mrs. Risa Jason began capturing photos when she observed Harold's abrupt slimming. Fletcher declared she'd recognized him for 15 years and observed Brenda separate him from everybody who concerned for him. The chronology was condemning. Harold's drop had hastened swiftly after Brenda relocated as his guardian. Financial extractions escalated. Communal interactions vanished, and his wellness worsened with dubious regularity. But the decisive evidence was Harold's script. Fletcher displayed me specimens covering 2 years. Initial papers exhibited Harold's tidy, stable mark. Subsequent papers, authority of lawyer documents, financial modifications, coverage recipient revisions, exhibited progressively unsteady writing that ultimately appeared nothing like Harold's grip. She was counterfeiting his mark while likely toxifying him. I declared, the fragments aligning. Improves, Martinez appended. The coverage firm possesses protection recordings of Brenda exchanging the demise advantage payment. She employed Harold's identification and fabricated papers asserting he'd relocated to Arizona prior to perishing. Now arrived the specialized particulars that would secure Brenda's destiny. When you perpetrate postal deceit by utilizing another's location to acquire fraudulent disbursements, each postal item turns a distinct national serious offense. Brenda had been employing Harold's location for more than a year post his demise. 47 distinct postal deceit accusations. Martinez declared with contentment. Each one bears up to 20 years. She's facing existence without release, even sans a slaying verdict. The IRS perspective was similarly ruinous. Brenda had asserted the cabin as her main abode for levy objectives, while truly dwelling in her mobile home. She'd also neglected to disclose the coverage funds, the unlawful Airbnb earnings, and the assorted benevolent swindles she'd executed across the neighborhood. Levy avoidance on $18,000 in undisclosed revenue. Martinez proceeded, plus fines and accrual. She is indebted to the authorities approximately $30,000. Fletcher had readied the most harmful proof of all, a sufferer consequence declaration that would be recited at Brenda's ultimate judgment. Harold's concluding months, his seclusion, his disorientation as somebody relied on, gradually assassinated him. I've been anticipating 2 years to witness her in restraints, Fletcher uttered softly. Harold was a decent gentleman who merited superior than perishing solitary and terrified. The scheme was to permit Brenda persist intensifying while we recorded all. Her menaces, her estate ruin, her fabrications to press. It all boasted a national lawsuit for hindrance of fairness and observer coercion. She's excavating her own tomb, Martinez declared. Each offense she perpetrates now just simplifies our task. We established an interaction procedure. I persist behaving like an irritated estate holder combating intruders, while the FBI operated covertly. Any menaces or interaction from Brenda got promptly disclosed and recorded. The exquisite portion was how her own conceit would be her ruin. Brenda believed she was handling an innocent, separated builder who'd ultimately surrender and depart. She had no notion she was being pursued by national operatives with boundless assets and infinite endurance. The snare is established, Martinez declared as she gathered the proof containers. Now we await for her to step into it. Fletcher clasped my palm again prior to departing. Appreciate you for not surrendering, Jake. Harold's essence can ultimately repose when this beast is incarcerated. That evening, I positioned in my dwelling gazing at Harold's images, contemplating an aged gentleman who perished solitary because he relied on the incorrect individual. The peak breeze exterior aromed like evergreen and opportunity. Fairness was approaching for Brenda Hutchkins. She just didn't realize it yet. A week on, Brenda entirely forfeited her sanity. I'm positioned in my dwelling assessing the FBI strategy scheme when my device erupts with alerts, not textual communications. This occasion, complete online platform conflict. Brenda had fabricated phony Facebook profiles, bogus Twitter handles, even counterfeit Yelp critiques aimed at my building enterprise. Each entry depicted me as a bigoted slum proprietor who deliberately preyed on lone moms and ethnic groups. Jake Morrison construction wrecks households. Declared one entry with a manipulated image of me that rendered me resemble a mass murderer. This exploiter acquired our residence solely to expel a handicapped lone mom and her exceptional requirements offspring. The responses were brutal. Individuals I'd never encountered demanding my enterprise be shunned, my builder certification withdrawn, even proposing I ought to be handled individually. But Brenda's largest blunder was involving my former spouse in it. She'd somehow discovered Lisa's Instagram and shared remarks alleging I was a batterer who'd render my kin destitute. Lisa, to her merit, promptly contacted to alert me. Jake, some insane lady is sharing falsehoods about you across my online platforms, Lisa stated, appearing truly worried for the initial occasion since our separation. She's asserting you assaulted me and pilfered my residence. It's complex. I informed her, but don't interact with her. She's perilous. The odor of hopelessness was virtually emanating from Brenda's progressively deranged conduct. Agent Martinez had cautioned me this would occur. Trapped hunters always strike out frankly prior to capture. Then Tyler intensified to bodily coercion. I'm departing my flat for a work location when I discover him reclining against my vehicle, inhaling a smoke with the nonchalant threat of somebody who'd served time in regional detention. Jake, correct? He utters, flicking residue onto my windscreen. The dawn breeze bore the sharp aroma of his inexpensive nicotine blended with the tart reek of unclean garments and flawed existence decisions. She prepared to strike a bargain. Tyler persisted. Divide the coverage funds Harold bequeathed. $20,000 apiece, and we all depart content. I nearly chuckled. What coverage funds? Don't feign ignorance. Mom discovered Harold's policy documents. $40,000. We'll include you for half if you abandon the expulsion. The youth had no notion he was admitting to national offenses, while I captured all on my device. Blackmail, plot to execute deceit, and accomplice to slaying all in one handy bundle. Tyler, I declared serenely, I'm not intrigued by your mom's tainted funds. His demeanor shadowed. That's an error, Jake. Mishaps befall individuals who don't recognize when to cease. 2 days on, my vehicle wheels were cut. The dawn following that, somebody hurled a stone to my flat pane with a message attached to it. Ultimate caution. But Brenda's hopelessness resulted in her most disastrous mistake yet. Agent Martinez contacted me Thursday dawn, scarcely restraining her enthusiasm. Jake, Brenda just reached out to the coverage firm straight. She's attempting to submit a secondary demand on Harold's policy, alleging there was an administrative mistake in the initial disbursement sum. She's attempting to duplicate. Improves. She contacted from Harold's former contact number, the one she's been employing to sustain his services and acquire his post. She designated herself as Harold's property manager and insisted they rehandle his demand. The capture of that telephone discussion would ultimately be broadcast in national judiciary. Brenda, in her personal tone, perpetrating postal deceit, coverage deceit, and persona theft while the coverage firm's protection unit captured every syllable. She also committed a vital lapse. Martinez persisted. She mentioned particulars about Harold's concluding days that solely somebody cohabiting with him would recognize. Particulars that oppose her firm declarations about residing elsewhere. That afternoon, Tyler committed his own lethal blunder. He invaded my flat while I was at employment, likely seeking papers he could pilfer or demolish. What he encountered instead was the FBI monitoring apparatus overseeing my location. The invasion was seized in high-definition footage displaying Tyler rummaging through my documents, imaging my judicial papers, and pilfering my portable computer. National intrusion and access, theft of proof in a national probe, hindrance of fairness. They're disintegrating. Martinez informed me that dusk as we assess the recordings. Brenda's becoming careless because she realizes we're approaching. Tyler's committing errors because he's intoxicated half the period and foolish the remainder. But the ultimate spike in their casket emerged from an unanticipated origin, Madison, Brenda's adolescent offspring. She'd been observing her mom's progressively unpredictable conduct and her siblings' unlawful intensification, and something within her ultimately shattered. She appeared at the sheriff's unit, requesting to converse with somebody about her kin. She desires to attest against her mom, Martinez clarified. Evidently, she's aware about the slayings for months. Brenda boasted about tending Harold and additional age males. She's prepared to don a recorder. The peak breeze that evening savored like triumph was ultimately attainable. After months of Brenda's mental combat, her own kin was revolting against her. How extended until we advance? I queried. Martinez grinned. Community gathering tomorrow evening, 700 p.m. Attend. The snare was ultimately prepared to activate the day prior to the community gathering. Brenda proceeded entirely explosive. I awoke to discover every wheel on my vehicle cut, my flat postbox crammed with judicial documents, and 17 voice messages from an attorney alleging an advocate for Miss Hutchkins in her torment lawsuit against you. The attorney, some low-tier named Dennis Kowalski, who promoted on public transport seats, had submitted a limiting directive alleging I'd been pursuing and frightening his patron. The aroma of inexpensive fragrance and hopelessness virtually drifted off the judicial papers. My patron has been compelled to exist in dread, the submission declared, while this exploited property owner employs coercion methods to compel a handicapped lone mom from her long-standing kin residence. Handicapped? This was fresh to me. But Brenda's masterwork was the health paperwork she'd somehow produced. Physicians' annotations alleging she endured from PTSD, unease, and a cardiac ailment, all purportedly initiated by my hostile torment. She's skilled. Agent Martinez declared when I relayed her the limiting directive, likely compensated some fraudulent physician to compose these, but it's also proof of deceit, so she just provided us another national accusation. Then Brenda executed her most frantic maneuver yet. Tyler appeared at my flat that afternoon with Madison accompanying, but rather than his customary brute coercion, he appeared truly frightened. "Jake, we're required to converse," he declared, peeking anxiously over his arm. "Mom's forfeited it. She's discussing incinerating the cabin and alleging you executed it for coverage deceit." Madison, ashen and quivering, advanced. "She's been scheming it for days. She believes if the estate gets ruined, all the judicial issues vanish." The sharp aroma of terror perspiration lingered in the atmosphere amid us. These youths had ultimately comprehended their mom wasn't merely a swindler. She was hazardous. "There's additional," Tyler persisted. "She's been conversing with some fellows she encountered in Jefferson County, cyclists who perform services for cash. She desires them to," he ingested firmly, "she desires them to ensure you don't reach the community gathering." My veins chilled to frozen liquid. Brenda was scheming to have me assassinated. I promptly contacted Agent Martinez, who reached within moments with a complete strategic squad. The FBI had been overseeing Brenda's interactions, and they'd already seized her contacts to the cyclist group. We apprehended 3 affiliates of the Iron Wolves Bike Association an hour prior. Martinez informed us they were ascending here with fuel and armaments. Brenda compensated them $5,000 to manage her property owner issue eternally. Madison commenced sobbing. I'm profoundly apologetic. I endeavored to halt her, but she declared you were going to demolish our kin. She declared slaying Harold was merely the commencement, and she'd execute whatever required to safeguard us. That's when the ultimate fragment of Brenda's distorted enigma aligned. Tyler extracted his device and displayed us textual communications from his mom over the prior week, captures of her scheming my slaying, debating how to render it appear as a mishap, even investigating my daily patterns to discover the ideal chance. She's been trailing you, Tyler declared, capturing images of where you reside, where you employ, what period you depart in the dawn. She's obtained an entire dossier on you. But the most condemning proof was an audio capture Madison had executed covertly. Brenda, elevated on amphetamine and inebriated on her own psychopathy, boasting about assassinating Harold. That aged imbecile never anticipated it. Brenda's tone crackled through the device amplifier, a minor coolant in his dawn brew every day for 3 months. He believed he was acquiring the influenza. Foolish wretch endorsed over all prior to he expired. Agent Martinez's mandible clenched. That's an admission to primary-level slaying. The capture persisted with Brenda outlining how she'd investigated additional prospective targets, how she refined her method with prior age males, and how she schemed to persist the slayings until she possessed sufficient funds to withdraw somewhere temperate. Jake was supposed to be simple. Brenda's tone persisted. Separated fellows typically surrender when you render their existence's wretched sufficient, but this won't cease, so he's got to vanish eternally. As we hearkened to this beast nonchalantly debating my execution, the mountaineer exterior appeared to become rarer. This wasn't merely about estate deceit any longer. This was about halting a serial murderer who'd advanced to hired slaying. The community gathering is still occurring tomorrow evening, Martinez proclaimed. But now it's not merely about acquiring Brenda to admit to deceit. We're acquiring her to admit to scheming your slaying. She regarded Tyler and Madison with something nearing compassion. You two just preserved Jake's existence and likely averted your mom from becoming a complete domestic extremist. That dusk, I positioned in my flat under FBI safeguard, contemplating how near I'd approached to becoming Brenda's fifth target. The aroma of intense perspiration had been substituted by the pure fragrance of fairness ultimately reaching. Tomorrow evening, the beast would ultimately be confined. But initially, she had to step into our snare one final occasion. Thursday evening, 700 p.m. The Woodland Park Society hub-hummed with additional vitality than a minor town vote. Term had circulated about the state privileges assembly, and the location was crammed with over 200 inhabitants, plus press teams from 3 Denver broadcast channels. The aroma of scorched brew from the volunteer refreshment area blended with anxious perspiration and expectation as individuals occupied every collapsible seat and bordered the partitions. I positioned in the rear line. FBI operatives stationed tactically across the assembly. Agent Martinez had informed me on the scheme. Permit Brenda execute her sufferer performance, then methodically demolish her fabrications with proof. The objective wasn't merely an admission. It was total public disgrace that would render any panel judgment unavoidable. At 7:15, Brenda executed her arrival. She entered in a mobility chair. Evidently, her impairment had advanced rapidly, propelled by Tyler, who was striving to appear as a committed offspring rather than a collaborator in homicide. Madison trailed after, grasping a handkerchief container, and donning the sort of sorrowful look that fit in a secondary school theater show. Brenda had surpassed herself with the attire, cervical support, limb harness, air cylinder next to her mobility chair. She appeared as if she'd been struck by a vehicle rather than revealed as a mass murderer. The assembly whispered compassionately as Tyler maneuvered her to the forefront of the space. Multiple individuals I identified from her Facebook misinformation genuinely cheered her bravery for participating despite her wounds. Mayor Patterson convened the assembly to sequence. We're present this evening to converse about estate entitlements and renter safeguards in our society. Mrs. Hutchkins has solicited to address initially. Brenda's display was Oscar quality. Appreciate you all for attending, she uttered in a tone scarcely over a murmur boosted by the cordless amplifier attached to her medical robe. I'm present despite my physician's directives because I require this society to comprehend what's occurring to susceptible households in our community. She wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. My offspring and I have designated Harold Brennan's cabin our dwelling for more than a year. We tended to Harold in his concluding days, preserved his estate, commemorated his legacy by maintaining his residence brimming with affection. The assembly was absorbing it fully. Multiple individuals ascended knowingly, directing furious stares in my path. Now, a business financier has acquired our residence and desires to cast us to the pavement. When I endeavored to clarify our circumstances, he grew aggressive. He's ruined our estate, menaced my offspring, and frightened our household. Tyler advanced on signal. This individual has rendered our existences torment. Mom's wellness has deteriorated due to the tension. We simply desire to exist in tranquility. That's when I arose. Mrs. Hutchkins, I declared audibly sufficient for all to perceive. Would you object to clarifying to everybody how you were acquainted with Harold Brennan? The hue vanished from her visage, but she recuperated swiftly. Harold was akin to kin to us. I was his guardian amid his sickness. What sickness precisely? He possessed memory loss. Couldn't manage himself. I proceeded to the forefront of the space, every gaze and the location tracking me. That's intriguing because Harold's health logs display no identification of memory loss. Would you prefer to view them? Agent Martinez arose from the crowd, emblem plainly evident. FBI Distinctive Operative Sarah Martinez. Mrs. Hutchkins, you're under national scrutiny for the assassination of Harold Brennan. The space detonated. Inhalations, exclamations, individuals pivoting to their locals in skepticism. Brenda's dramatic poise fractured for merely an instant before reverting to position. This is torment, she yelled. They're attempting to mute me because I'm uncovering their dishonesty. That's when Fletcher Brennan arose from his position in the central area. My name is Fletcher Brennan. Harold was my relative. The space became utterly quiet. Fletcher proceeded to the forefront, his tone bearing the gravity of 2 years of mourning and scrutiny. Harold Brennan was assassinated by this lady for his vitality coverage funds. She toxified him gradually while pilfering his estate and separating him from his kin. Brenda's facade ultimately faltered entirely. That's a fabrication. Harold perished of organic reasons. I possessed the demise document. You counterfeited the demise document, Agent Martinez declared, advancing with a binder of papers. Just as you counterfeited Harold's mark on the coverage recipient alteration, just as you counterfeited his authority of lawyer papers. The regional broadcast cameras were seizing every syllable as Brenda's meticulously built structure of deceptions crumbled in actual time. Harold never possessed memory loss, Fletcher persisted, his tone fracturing with sentiment. He was robust and keen until you commenced toxifying him. I possess images displaying his deterioration, financial logs displaying you pilfering his funds, and captures of you admitting to his assassination. That's when Brenda committed her ultimate deadly blunder. He merited it, she shrieked, leaping up from her mobility chair in flawless wellness. That foolish aged gentleman was squandering his funds. I terminated his suffering and utilized his holdings more effectively. The society hub erupted as Brenda comprehended what she'd just conceded on broadcast television. Agent Martinez grinned darkly and extracted her restraints. Brenda Hutchkins, you're detained for the assassination of Harold Brennan and plot to execute assassination against Jake Morrison. As the restraints secured into position, the assembly erupted into impromptu cheers. Fairness ultimately had reached. 6 months on, I'm positioned on my entry veranda, observing dawn coat the Colorado summit's amber and rose, sipping brew that savors like success, and inhaling peak breeze ultimately pure deceptions. The judgment proceeding was all I'd anticipated. Justice Patricia Hawkins regarded Brenda straight in the orbs as she conveyed the decision. Existence without option of release for 4 accusations of primary-level assassination, plus 40 years for national deceit accusations. You will expire in incarceration, Mrs. Hutchkins, which is greater compassion than you displayed your targets. Brenda had attempted one ultimate display, alleging psychological ailment and youth distress, but the panel perceived directly through her performance. 12 minutes of consultation. Culpable on all accusations. Tyler received 8 years for estate ruin and plot. He'll likely fulfill 4 with proper conduct, presuming he remains off the stimulant. Madison attested against her mom with bravery that evoked sobs to the tribunal, then was situated with affectionate kin in Texas, where she's flourishing in education and counseling. But the genuine success was what transpired to our society subsequently. The weekend after Brenda's verdict, something enchanting happened. Over 60 locals appeared at my cabin with equipment, supplies, and baked dishes, prepared to obliterate every vestige of Tyler's devastation. The aroma of wood particles blended with grill haze and authentic human benevolence saturated the peak breeze. Frank from Murphy's Hardware contributed substitute timber. Lisa Rodriguez coordinated volunteer dishes that endured 4 days. Even Deputy Rick Morrison, flushed with shame about facilitating Brenda, labored beside me fitting fresh. Pains, I should have relied on you from the outset, he conceded, perspiration accumulating on his brow as we elevated a weighty structure into position. She controlled me like an expert marionettist, Miguel, and I initiated Mountain sincere building, focusing on assisting deceit targets reconstruct their estates and existences. Our purpose declaration: sincere labor for sincere individuals, because everybody merits a secondary opportunity at residence. The most unanticipated grace was Rosemary, Those delayed evenings constructing judicial lawsuits transformed into early dawn brewed dialogues about existence, deprivation, and secondary opportunities. Her exceptional judicial intellect was equaled solely by her empathetic soul, and her jasmine infusion had been substituted by mutual dawns on my veranda. "You comprehend your renown now," she declared, positioning beside me with her portable computer. 5 additional dialogue solicitations yesterday. Plus, somebody desires to produce a Netflix film. My narrative had become widespread. Separated builder uncovers mass murderer. But more crucially, it became a plan for other deceit targets to identify and combat comparable swindles. The FBI employed our lawsuit in instruction sessions countrywide. The Harold Brennan Commemoration Fund became our pinnacle accomplishment. Employing reclaimed coverage funds and contributions from backers throughout America, we established a peak senior safeguard program, assisting all of countryside Colorado. Sheriff's units now acquire compulsory senior mistreatment instruction. Elderly hubs enact companion arrangements averting seclusion. Financial institutions mark dubious account alterations concerning aged patrons. Regional medical facilities examine for indications of monetary exploitation amid entries. Harold's assassination had been converted into a barrier safeguarding innumerable other prospective targets. Fletcher relocated to Colorado eternally, acquiring a minor cabin 5M up the peak. Uncle Harold's essence can ultimately repose, he informed me while angling at our fresh commemoration lake. His demise halted a beast and preserved existences. My estate worth escalated from $12,000 to over $100,000, but its actual value was incalculable. Monthly society grills, winter narrative evenings around the hearth, summer outdoor excursions for regional youths whose households couldn't finance holidays. Harold's residence had become an assembly location for restoration. The ultimate salvation arrived last month when Madison contacted from Texas. "Jake, I desired to appreciate you for never surrendering," she declared, her tone robust and distinct. "If you departed like Mom anticipated, she would have persisted assassinating individuals. You preserved existences by contending. She's scheming to pursue penal fairness and assist other targets of kin distress. Brenda's toxin had demolished her offspring's prospects after all. As dawn's sun ascends higher over summits, I contemplate that initial astonishing meeting with the lady in exercise leggings who believed she could pilfer my new beginning. The savor of genuine fairness isn't sugary. It's pure and unadulterated, like peak breeze after a purifying tempest. The cabin endures firm now, brimming with affection rather than deceptions, safeguarded by society rather than separated by hunters. Every dawn prompts me that decent individuals united can vanquish any wickedness. Drop a remark below with your own estate swindle or HOA horror narrative. Let's assist each other identify these hunters before they attack. Hit that enroll button and activate the alert chime for Karen's narratives, because regrettably beasts like Brenda are ubiquitous, but collectively we can halt them all. Share this with anybody acquiring repossessed estates or handling dubious intruders.